There was a part in the book where you talked about addressing a letter to God, and you addressed him as nobody. And I was really struck by that. You walked away from the church, I believe, as a result of that. But then you came back at a later point.
Right. It was kind of a little spooky. It was when I was 16. It was the last church that my dad pastored, and it ended in a very brutal business meeting where the church split. And my dad was very passionate about outreach, and the church wasn't. So there was some conflict there. And if Baptists cussed in business meetings, there would have been a lot of cussing in that meeting. But afterwards, it was just so loud and angry and filled with hate that I walked out of the church and I walked up this fire escape to the education building. I wrote this letter. I said, "Dear nobody, either show me that you exist or I'm out of here." And I guess I just expected some burning bush experience or some epiphany to fall on me, but nothing happened. And so I'm like, well, I'm done. Like, forget this. And I still have that letter. It's in my top dresser drawer at home.
Okay, so remind me again, how long was it between the time you wrote the letter and then the time you really came back and heard from God again? Because it was pretty dramatic when that happened.
It was probably about 6 years. So I was 21, 22 years old. And it was through, like I said, a series of very small events of people from my past just loving me, regardless of what my actions were, to being in a really serious car accident when I was 21 and walking away completely unharmed when, by all means, I should have been really severely injured, to another relationship of a girl named Christy who just poured out love and showed her own brokenness to me, and that is really began what I saw as someone can be broken and open, and I have all this brokenness that I've been hiding. Maybe I can open up about it too, because I could see the freedom that she had when she would share her story and the hurts, not just the good things about her story, but the really dark things too. And I thought maybe I should share some of these dark things with somebody and see where that goes. And God was woven into all of those things.
I'm sure we have a lot of leaders and pastors watching this who are desperate to create communities of grace. And if you were hired as a consultant and they ask you, what can we do to facilitate a space where people can speak freely, what would you tell them?
Right, and it's a messy, there's no easy three-step formula for this at all. And I've learned something in this process is a lot of people think that this means that they should suddenly get up and confess everything in a very public forum and just, air out their laundry, air out their dirty laundry. And that's not, I think, a healthy or an appropriate way to do that. But for pastors or leaders to create this within their church, it's really got to start with that person. And I don't think necessarily that means that if you're a pastor, you need to get up on stage and say, you know what, I've really been battling lust for the last 5 years, and explain this to your whole congregation. I don't think that's necessarily appropriate. But if you can find another pastor or a counselor, for me, it's been a lot in counseling and therapy, where you can confess these things and just let them out, bring light to them, people will see that you're living a transparent life.
And you really can't fake authenticity.
You cannot fake it at all. I've tried so hard in my own experience to do that, and I've learned you can't do it because people will see through that, and some people more easily than others. But it's really got to start with each of us by ourselves individually, and it's a contagious thing. Like I said, I saw my friend Christy living this life where she was speaking freely and openly in an appropriate way with appropriate people about her story, and I saw how God had rescued her, how there was hope for her, and how God was using her. And by keeping everything inside and pretending that everything is perfect, how are people going to see that there's hope? How are people going to see that God's redeeming the broken areas in your life if you pretend that everything is fine and perfect? So by just being vulnerable and that takes, I think, humility, that takes just being honest. There's so many characteristics that are scriptural and Christ-like that takes that are just going to shine through. Even if somebody doesn't know what your secrets specifically are, they're going to see that you're living this humble, transparent life, and they're going to see, but this person has hope, like God's doing something in them, and I want that, and they'll explore that.
And it really invites people in.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes we think that if we share our weaknesses or our faults, people will be repulsed or repelled.
Right.
But it is so counterintuitive. It's exactly the opposite, and you demonstrate that so well in the book.
Yeah.
What's really your hope for the book? I mean, I know how hard it is to write a book. It's a lot of work, and particularly to promote it like you're doing now. So what's your hope as people begin to read this and dig into it?
I think that first and like underlying broad stroke of the book would be to know that people aren't alone. That I do talk about some of the issues I've gone through, and they're issues that aren't really talked about in church sometimes, like porn and addiction and abuse and mental health. And there's other issues I don't talk about that I haven't struggled with, but just to simply know that people aren't alone in their broken areas, that everyone has a past and a secret, and everyone carries a weight. And even now, I mean, those are things in my past, but I'm not a perfect person, so there are still lots of things that are broken that I'm dealing with now, and we all share that. It's just humanity. The world is broken because we are broken ourselves. And so to feel that they're not alone, and to see that there is hope for their rescue, to see that God's done a really amazing work in my own story and in other stories that are shared in the book as well, when you confess, when you bring light into some place that's dark, it's God's glory that's truly revealed. And I don't know who said this, it's one of those quotes that kind of just gets passed around, so I forgive whoever said this for not crediting them, but it says we often fear the consequences of our confession, but we don't ever think about the consequences of our concealment. And we're scared to talk about things, but we never really think about the consequences of if we don't talk about those things.
Look, honestly, I don't get excited about every book I read, but I'm really excited about this one. It touched me deeply. I think it's going to be an enormous help to a lot of people that read it, because it's going to give them the permission in their own lives to speak freely and to find healing. And I just hope we sell a zillion copies.
Oh, thanks for reading it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ann.